listened to my series on Romans 9 to 11, you will have heard me say that Romans 11 provides vital understanding about the call of Christians today to stand with Israel. Just to recap two verses in Romans 11:11 and 15, because of Israel's stumbles, salvation now extends to all non-Jewish people in order to make Israel jealous and desire the very things that God has freely given them. For if their temporary rejection released the reconciling power of grace into the world, what will happen when Israel is reinstated and reconciled to God? It will unleash resurrection power throughout the whole earth. While they are powerful scriptures, and many Jewish people in Israel today actually feel that many people hate them. But when you tell them that you love them, you pray for them, and you're standing with them, their whole demeanor changes. Because of the history of Christians with the Crusades, the Holocaust, and much more, Jewish people have had it difficult to trust Christians. But over recent years that we have been involved in working in this space, we've discovered a huge shift as believers have done many things to stand with Israel. And my guest today is a Christian artist who lives in Sydney. Recently, All Israel News and Charisma News reported on an exciting art project that Justin has just completed in Israel. So, Justin Hook, welcome to the Tabernacle of David via 105.1 today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure. Justin, I was so excited to see your video and the report in these news reports, especially in Charisma magazine. Tell us how your journey and connection with Israel began and a little bit about that journey.
Okay, well, it is a long journey, and I'll try and just give you the bullet points because it's actually quite supernatural, quite very spiritual, and definitely something I was not looking for. So that's also very key. In 2001, I had a very powerful experience with the Spirit of God again, which I wasn't looking for. And God really woke my heart up to the truth of Yeshua, the truth of Jesus as being the Savior of the world, that heaven was open, all the good stuff that has to do with walking with God. And so I, as a young 21-year-old man, was totally transformed and began this incredible pursuit of wanting to know the Bible, wanting to know the truth, wanting to know what it meant to walk with God. And at the time, my family was running a little house church, like a little house group who would meet with other believers. And my mother is a Christian, been for quite some time. I was kind of just new to the faith because I wasn't really walking with God for quite a while. And then she had remarried during my teenage years to a man from South America, from Chile, but he was of Jewish descent. So he's considered a Messianic Jew. And I wasn't really heavy into any of all that background stuff. I just had a profound experience with God and kind of reconciled with my family and was meeting with them. Well, in one of the meetings that we had, maybe a year or so after receiving salvation and walking with the Lord, I was in the lounge room with my stepfather, and we had just finished a gathering together of worship. And out of the blue, he just looked at me across the room and just said, "You're going to Israel," out of nowhere.
Wow.
And I remember thinking, Israel? Like, I was 21 years old. To be very honest, in my ignorance, I probably couldn't have even told you where it was on the map. I mean, I knew it was in the Middle East. I knew it was up near Egypt, but I couldn't actually tell you where it was on the map. So I remember thinking, Israel? I had no inclination to go to Israel.
Yep.
Well, we continued our walk in faith and our meetings. We've moved house and things like that. And I started to pick up and get associated with ministries all over the world. People like Benny Hinn and Marilyn Hickey and others that did actually travel to Israel. Yeah. So I used to sort of watch them going there and everything, but nothing still really resonated. And then a couple of years later, I was with my mom in the car, and we were just doing something very normal, not spiritual. We were just gone out grocery shopping, and we drove back into the driveway, and I was in the passenger seat, and she had her hands on the steering wheel, and then she just stopped, and it seemed like she was arrested, and she looked at me, and she just said, "You're going to Israel."
Oh, wow.
And this was a few years later, so I remember thinking, Oh, and I remember feeling that same kind of witness in my spirit, like there was
Yep.
something on that. I thought, God, that's so unusual. Okay. And that kind of triggered me to start maybe doing a bit of research. It kind of was like a rabbit trail. So then
Mm.
I think I went online and I started researching the country and kind of looking at Bible maps, and I still didn't have any picture or scope of what that meant. But something had been, planted. So then a couple of years later, again, um, we're in a house meeting, and I was in a situation where I don't know, I just wanted to see a little bit more of the the reality of the Lord in my life. I'd been pursuing him quite passionately for a few years. And I hit a sense of frustration. Like I felt like I wanted to try and apprehend more of something that was going on inside of me. So I sat down with my stepfather, one of Jewish descent, and I just said, can we pray? I need some sort of solution here. I need to really hear from God. And he said, okay. So we got into a position of prayer, and I asked him to lay his hands on me, and he did, as you do. And all of a sudden, this magnificent presence of the Father came into the room. It was very overwhelming. And unbeknownst to anyone else in the room, I got caught up into a heavenly vision. And it wasn't something I wasn't pursuing that. I knew these things were real because I'd heard other people have them. And I won't go through all of it because a lot of it's very personal. A lot of it's like it's not pertinent to this sharing. But the one thing that is pertinent is the fact that I was captured into a moment in the spiritual realm, in the heavens, where the Father, the God of Israel, um, basically took me into his entire heart and mind and purpose and thought for the country and the people of Israel. The whole thing got completely vacuumed into my spirit.
Just a download.
It was a total download, and it was like he just kind of unrolled the whole panoramic of the country,
Wow.
and just the pain that he felt of the separation from being apart from them, the love that he has for Israel, not greater than anyone else that he has on the planet, but just he was sharing part of his heart with me. And it did something so drastic on the inside of me, because it was
Mm.
like anytime that you have a moment with God and he shares your heart, you're forever ruined for anything else.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
it literally changes your identity and
Mm.
your purpose, because you're permanently linked to the emotion of the eternal one. So that was enough. When we came out of that moment, I'd been crying and I was totally undone. And a whole bunch of other things happened in that moment, which kind of really set the course and perspective of my life on course. So I thought, okay, I have to book my tickets and go to this country, because I
Yeah.
felt like I felt like I was already there in the spirit. Like
Yeah.
I could sense the nation and the culture. So I ended up booking tickets in 2005, and I didn't know who else to go with. So I actually went with Benny Hinn,
Oh,
of
wow.
all people.
Oh,
And
wow.
he had a tour. He had a tour back then where he took 2,000 people.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh my goodness, is right.
That's
So
a lot of buses.
it was like 20 something buses, and it was absolute, in Hebrew you would say zebalagan, which is like it's just crazy. It
Yeah.
was like it was out of control. It was life changing. It was
Yeah.
one of the most incredible things I'd ever done. It was the first time I'd ever been overseas. I know, you pick where do you want to go. First time overseas as a little 24-year-old. I'll just go to Israel.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was like it was this coming of age epic adventure. I went on my own. Um, but it totally transformed my life, because not only when I landed in the country, I had this incredible sense like I'd come home. It was very weird.
Yeah. No, no, we all say that.
We all say it.
Yeah.
Um, I started to fall in love with the culture. Even I love the food. I love the
Yep.
music. I love the nature of these people that live in probably one of the most difficult scenarios on the planet, and they're so misunderstood and they're so hated, uh, illogically. And so, and then the beauty of the land, like, so it's just like the most intense environment. But also, of course, God had put in my heart a love for the people that was beyond my own ability. So I couldn't
Mm.
help but connect. I couldn't help but make friends. I couldn't help but want to pray for people. I couldn't help to want to just give and love and demonstrate goodness. So that was back in 2005. And since then, I mean, I've traveled to other places in the world and I've got a whole life story, but I'm very well connected with the country, and I love the country and I honor what God is doing, and I just try and harmonize with that and share it. So that's to kind of bring you up
Oh,
to speed.
that
Yeah,
that's just awesome.
yeah.
So I'm talking today with Justin Hawke, and we'll talk a little bit more in a moment about what he's just been doing in Israel. But first, we're going to listen to Karen Davis from Mount Carmel singing Israel, My Beloved. My guest today is Justin Hooke, who's an artist in Sydney, and he's just been to Israel and painted a mural on a bare cement wall in a little village. And Justin, first of all, congratulations. It actually looks wonderful. But let's talk about the town where you just completed the project, the
Mm,
village, how big it is, what happened to do it, and
mm.
um, and about this beautiful mural that you've just painted.
Yeah, wow. It's been such an exciting journey, and it's been actually incredible. I've never been part of a project that has been kissed with so much grace. I mean, it's really quite funny. So the backstory is that I know a family that lives in the village.
Mhm.
The village is called Mesilat Zion, and it basically means the highway to Zion.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, it's so incredible. It's very interestingly positioned. I don't know if you know the story about the Burma Highway, but in the '67 war, obviously, when England was trying to take back Jerusalem, or conquest it, it
Yep.
was held off by the Jordanians, and they couldn't get back into the city. And so they had an American officer come over from the States who strategized to carve out this road around the mountains and get back into Jerusalem to
Oh,
capture
yes,
it.
I have heard that story. Yeah.
Yes, and so apparently there's an old film made about it, and
Yep.
it's quite interesting to watch if you ever see it. But this was called the Burma Highway, and Mesilat Zion is right just there at the entrance point. So it's a very historical area. It's got about 1,200 inhabitants,
Mhm.
and funnily enough, a lot of them, like the first group to settle there, was the Kachini Jews from India. So I don't know if you know, but Israel has a huge Indian
Yes.
Hebrew
Mm.
population. And I wasn't aware that it was so vast as well, you know. So it's
Yep.
kind of strange as an Australian to go there and talk to Indians that
That are
they
Jewish. Yeah.
sound Hebrew, they look Hebrew, they're Jewish, they
Mm.
study the Torah,
Yep.
they take off Shabbat. It's like it does something to your mind, because here, when we think of Indians, we think of Hindus, we think of
Yeah.
sometimes Muslims, and so it's a completely different mannerism, culture, everything. So it was kind of like a bit of a culture shock for me to be in this village and meet them. But they were some of the most lovely and most hospitable people. So the story was that, or goes that, this family that have moved in there, it's a family, a couple by the name of Yoav and Grace. Yoav is Israeli and Grace was from Great Britain, and she moved to Israel probably well over 10 years now, and they got married. They've now got 3 kids, beautiful children, ages 2, 5, and 8.
Mhm.
Crazy, wonderful. And as I've been friends with them for such a long time, we would communicate over WhatsApp from Australia to Israel all the time. And Grace herself is an artist. And just about maybe a year and a half ago, I got this message from her on WhatsApp. It was an audio message, and she just said, "Hey, Justin. Hey, I just want to let you know that I've had a thought come to me, and I don't know if it will, if it's anything. It's just a thought." But she said, in the village that we live in Mesilat Zion, during when you come around the entrance point to go down to our street, she said, I drive by this massive, big, huge, ugly cement wall. And she
Yep.
said, I drive past it every single day, and it's just so depressing. Like every time we go past, it's just this big, it's like a retaining wall, but it's just so vacant and bland, and it's just so ugly. She said, I would love to see something nice be put there. And it's got like things growing over it and everything. She goes, I don't know what would be involved, but she said, I know that you're planning to come back to Israel at some stage, and we want to host you and see you. She goes, would you ever be willing to paint something on there? Like, would you be willing to do that if I could somehow sort it? And I was like, of course, when I heard that, I thought, of course. I mean, it's every artist's dream to be able to paint something big. I mean, I'd never painted a wall before. I'd never used spray paint before. I mean,
Oh,
I work on canvas, which some of it you can see behind me,
yep.
or digital or things like that. But I just thought, what an opportunity. And she said, yeah, look, if it's nothing, like if it's just a vain idea, then we can just dismiss it. But like if it's a God thing, then let's pray about it and see what happens. So I responded with a big thumbs up and like, yes, that sounds amazing. Go for it. See what you can work out. Well, she managed to just bump into a lady at the park who I think she worked at the post office who knew everybody in the village, and she just happened to mention the idea, and they got very excited over it. And she showed them some of my artwork from my website. And then, of course, it got escalated. It went to the committee of the village. Yeah, she discussed it with them, and she just said, look, I don't know what would be involved, but I've got this artist coming to stay with us. Hopefully, if he organizes it next year, and there's this big, huge wall, and what would be the procedure in getting art there? So they had to basically have a meeting about it and consider what would the cost be involved, and did they have to pay me? And I said, look, because it's a first off, I'd be more than happy to do it as a gift. But would they be willing to pay for the material? And so they decided to have a meeting about it. That we got the green light. We only had to just agree on what content I was going to put on the wall. So they gave us a sum of money, which was, I think, in my opinion, pretty reasonable for what I needed. It wasn't getting paid to me, but it was for the material.
Yeah.
And they said the only thing that we needed to do is that apparently the wall, even though it's a retaining wall and it's public view, there's a house on top of it. And so all of the land is considered owned by the owner of the house. And so we'll have to pass it through the house to make sure that they agree with what you're doing. So they agreed, but they said, just look, as long as it's not like some big welcome to Messilatsion or anything religious or anything like that. I said, could it just be neutral? So, I mean, we were very excited. Of course, we said yes. And that's where it started. So I had obviously planned the trip. I'd been in Europe and Italy, and then I ended up going to Israel and planned to stay there for about 8 weeks. And then, we worked with the village. They sorted us out, and we went shopping for paint. And then that was the beginning of the journey.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Because I just know in Israel there's a lot of regulations you have to go through, and there's a lot of those concrete walls in Israel.
Yes.
And so on and so forth. So you've called the mural The Dream and the Almond. So for those that are going to be on YouTube, we're going to put the picture up of the mural, but for those that are listening on radio, they won't be able to see it. So can you describe what the artwork is and what the story is that it's going to tell?
Absolutely. So this was very exciting to kind of brainstorm this one. So it's called The Dream and the Almond Tree, but I mean, in Hebrew, the word almond and almond tree is the same thing. So basically, when we were thinking about what to put, I mean, originally I was thinking about the Burma Highway. I was thinking about the history of the village, and I wanted to do like a native scene with like a incredible highway going up towards Jerusalem and have Jerusalem in the background with the sun. But because they didn't want something that was, too religious and too sort of saying this is Israel, this is Jerusalem, I had to go a little bit more neutral, because you have to understand that Israel is a very, very intense country where things of belief can trigger people.
Yes.
I mean, everyone gets along. Don't get me wrong. Like the Jews, the Arabs, the Gentiles, they do actually all live together and like in a good harmony. I believe it's only the radical terrorism from the outside that sneaks its way and that makes a difficulty. But as far as people getting along, everyone gets along and they respect each other's beliefs, sometimes too much. So they have healthy boundaries. But if you were going to do something publicly, it kind of would have to settle with everybody. Do you know what I'm saying? Like otherwise you become like this, this flag saying, we believe this, and everyone's like, well, we don't believe that. And so it has to be a kind of, in a country that gets triggered easily and difficulties are spurred over belief systems, you want to do something neutral. So I was there to bring something of hope, of vision, something that was pleasant to look at. I mean, we can talk about it afterwards, but as an artist, that's my whole calling, is to bring people into a better space. Arts do have a role occasionally to you know, be a voice in society and to be sometimes get into activism and all that kind of stuff. But generally, they don't. Most of the art is supposed to be beautiful. So I scrapped the idea of that one with the highway up to Jerusalem, and I just really thought about it. And as I was talking to Grace, she said to me this amazing thing. She said, "You know what?" She said, "When I was thinking about moving, when me and Yov, she said, were thinking about moving to Mesilat Zion, she said they were in Tel Aviv before and they had visited the village once before. I thought, God, it's nice here, but people aren't really selling, and where could we go?" They decided to visit for a second time just to really think about another opportunity. And as they were driving into the village, she said that all of a sudden they rounded a corner and she saw this massive almond blossom that was in full bloom.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone in Israel knows that when you see the almond blossom in full bloom, it's an indication that the brand new season of spring is about to arrive. It's the first tree in Israel to blossom.
To blossom.
And there's two types. There's the white blossoms and the pink. But it's amazing because it was funny. I'm reading Karen Davis's book, you know, the genetic. Grace actually gave it to me, and it was funny because she didn't know I'd just been talking to Karen. So I was reading it back, and I've almost finished it. But there was a moment there where David was up on Mount Carmel in one of the places they were staying, and he said that he looked out his balcony window one day, and all of a sudden, this tree that looked like it was dead the day before, the day afterwards, was in full bloom.
Full bloom.
And it really spoke to him. It spoke to him about something because it's in the scripture. And so it's kind of like a phenomena in Israel because it literally looks like a dead tree. There's nothing on it. And then overnight, boom, it just explodes with blossoms. And it's all throughout the Bible. If you look at the almond rod, the almond tree, the almond bud, and one of the most prominent places that shows up is when God called Jeremiah. And in the beginning, he says some great things to him about how he chose him before the foundation of the world, just like us. And he appointed him for his office. But then he showed him a vision of an almond rod budding. And he said, "Jeremiah, what do you see?"
What do you see?
Said, "Well, I see an almond rod budding." And in Hebrew, the word is shaked. That's what it means to be an almond rod or almond tree. And God said to him, "It's good you have seen shaked because I'm about to shoked," which actually means to watch over something or to hasten to be diligent to watch over it. So the Lord actually used a pun. He actually punned with Jeremiah. And he said, "It's good that you're doing this because I am actually watching over my word to Israel to fulfill it." So when Grace was telling me about how the fact she saw an almond tree and, "Hey, maybe you should incorporate an almond tree," I just thought, that sounds amazing. And I'd never painted an almond tree before. So of course that was an aspect I was going to put in. And then I thought, what else? Well, I thought the land is called the pleasant land in the Bible. And there is something beautiful about Israel. Like if you go there during spring or something, you're just like, where am I? This could be Switzerland. Like everything's green and there's rolling hills and it's very lush in certain times. Very beautiful. It's very, very unique. Like, when I first went there, I was expecting to see like deserts in the Middle East and palm trees and oases. And then I came here, I was like, it always reminds me a lot like Australia. There's a lot of gum trees here.
There is. Yes.
Isn't it crazy? I mean,
yeah.
I remember sitting by the Jordan River years ago, my first trip, and I was sitting there and I was perplexed. I'm like, why do I feel like I'm in Australia? This is weird. I was mulling over, and 10 minutes later, it dawned on me, lining the river was gum trees all the way down. I thought, I could be out back or something. So it was just amazing. So I thought, okay, well, I've got this huge panoramic canvas. I have to paint the land. Like, it's just beautiful. And then I decided, well, I love sunrises. I love sunsets. It's one of the favorite time as an artist. Like the lighting is always different, always powerful. And in Jewish artistic history, a sunrise would always be painted in the east because it was symbolic of the Messiah coming to redeem Israel. So I thought, okay, well, I have these two things to incorporate. And so, I ended up just totally spontaneously. I mean, I did a tiny little sketch to give myself some, bearings. But then I looked at this huge wall and I didn't drop anything. I just got a spray can and just drew huge lines all the way across it. And, we prepped the wall and we had to do everything you need to do before painting on a wall. And we put some undercoat and everything like that. But then I just went for it totally spontaneously. I ended up incorporating a small olive tree on the right-hand side as well. And then I just went nuts. So I just painted layer after layer and just brought forth the background all the way to the foreground. And then when I paint in layers. And so I ended up,
Yes.
you know, darkening certain areas, lightening certain areas so it became more 3D. And then of course, yeah, adding trees, adding stones, adding grass, adding all the poppies that bloom. And then we got to the part of the almond tree, and it was very exciting to just build the
Yeah.
whole thing up. And I use stencils. So Grace is actually a stencil artist, and she does professional ketubas, which is Jewish marriage covenants and things like that. I think she still operates under the business name Paper Cuts, something like that. Grace Almond and Paper Cuts, beautiful stuff. So me and her worked on doing some stencils, and I would just do stencils of what I wanted to paint because I'm using spray paint by the end of it, and I would just stencil and spray over them.
Over the top.
So the whole process was very exciting, but it literally took me about 3.5 weeks, something like that.
And tell me, just to give us an idea, how big is this wall?
It's huge. So it's like 14.7 meters wide and 2.5 meters high. So it's massive. It's absolutely massive, but it's right at an intersection. And what's amazing, it just shows the beauty that comes out of Israeli culture. So native Israelis that are born in Israel are called, they usually give them like a slang name, and the name is Sabra, like Sabra or E. Sabra. Sabra is, I don't know if you've seen the spiky cactus that grows.
Yep.
We call it like I don't know, prickly pear or something.
Yes.
So the spiky cactus, they grow all over Israel, and that's what a sabra is. And people say that native-born Israelis are called sabra because from a distance, when you don't really know them, they come across as if they're really intimidating and quite stern. But when you get close to them, you actually find that beautiful fruit, and you can open it up, and it's just really soft and tender. And it's exactly what native Israelis are like. So especially when they can see that you're for them and that you love them and that you're giving something free. Unbelievable. So I literally, every single day that I was standing there working on this project, I had car after car after car of people stop and either wind down the window and yell out of the window like, like, thank you so much. It's glorious. Like I had families coming down at the evening, and every evening they'd bring their children down and they'd see what I'd added, and the children would look at everything. I had people inviting me to dinner. I had people inviting me to go hang out. I had everything. I had a guy drive down and give me coffee. Like it was crazy. So their hospitality, their hearts just was so open, and instantly I was received as one of the family of this entire village.
Yeah. That's just awesome.
Became the talk of the village. It was the most powerful project I've ever done. And I'm so thankful to God that He allowed me to do it. And I can't wait to do more. But it was just seeing the result of, I mean, as an artist, most people don't know that usually you're either in your studio or in your home where nobody can see you. You're isolated, you're on your own, and you're painting away, and or whatever you're creating. And then you want to share that because that's the whole point of art. So usually you'll do whatever you can to try and get people to be exposed to it, whether it's an exhibition, whether it's, I don't know, anything. And usually that costs even more, and there's all this investment, and sometimes even then still people don't see it, and sometimes people don't even buy it. So it's like, as an artist, there's always like a conquering and a conquest you've got to get through to even get anywhere.
Yeah.
So to be able to have the opportunity to not only work publicly, but on a massive scale, and then know that it's going to be there for as long as it lasts, I feel like I've already been rewarded with the whole purpose behind it, because I'm still getting messages from people in the village telling me how they love it and they're impacted. And do you know what I'm saying? Like, so the reach of this,
I do. In fact, I'd like to pick up a bit on this after the next song, because I think this is a really important touch point with Israel that I was saying before. So we'll just, it's the beautiful song, Awesome God. And this particular version is done by Gaithers, and it was actually recorded in Jerusalem. So we'll listen to this song, and then we'll come back and we'll discuss this further with Justin Hook. So my guest today is Justin Hook, an artist from Sydney who's just been in Israel, and we've just been discussing the new mural that you've just done. And touching on the very thing that I said at the very start of the program, of this interview, is that the Jewish people feel, they're persecuted by all over, misunderstood. When you just go to the land, they appreciate it. When you befriend them, they love it. But when you do something positive for them, like you've just done, and we started to talk about that before we listened to the song, Our Awesome God, and how awesome is he to use a blank wall that was ugly and to give you that opportunity to paint it, but the connection with the people to break down these barriers. You started to tell us about how people came every day. So let's just explore this a bit further. What's happened and what are you seeing in this breaking down of resistance to bring relationship? And no doubt they know you are a Christian, and how that goes, because it just goes to this softening of the hearts.
Well, it's funny. Most of them actually didn't know I had any faith. I didn't advertise it or share it or anything like that. I usually don't even tell people I'm a Christian when I'm in Israel. I mean, being that my stepfather's Jewish descent, my mother's a believer, I just say I'm a believer and I'm messianic. When it's pertinent, I'll tell people what my faith is. But most of the time, I'm very relational. I just love people. So
Yep.
I don't go there with anyone really, unless I feel that it's necessary to share it. But I tell you, like Israel, yes, very misunderstood people group, and as you know, the media is so horrible because
Yeah.
I mean, in every country, the media is horrible. I'll be honest. Like you're getting a tiny amount of truth in any country that you're in when we want to seek truth. But Israel is like every time you try and hear information there, you're getting 20% truth, 80% twisted,
Yep.
or a different agenda. And I think that in life, you just have to get into a space with your own 2 feet, see it with your own eyes and your own ears to make your own analysis.
Yeah.
And because I've been traveling back and forth there, you see that they're just people like everybody else. Most of what you hear isn't truth. And every culture has fruit. Every culture has something good in it. Every people group, but especially being in Israel, knowing their history, knowing the conflict and the mindset that they have to live in this almost survival mentality.
Yeah.
Because of just, it's like this, it's so bittersweet sometimes because you're in this magnificent land, which is so beautiful. It has so much to offer. You have all of these different cultures that are there throughout the generations, and each culture has this beautiful substance to it, and they're kind of cross-pollinating each other.
Yes.
But then you have these really strong, mindsets and belief systems that are creating such division and walls between people.
Yes.
Well, I mean, the only thing that brings down walls, in my opinion, is God's love, not human love, because we can only produce a certain amount, and usually it's conditional.
Yes.
But Yeshua, Jesus, the Messiah, he is personified love, and I think when any human gets a hold of him, then that actually changes your purpose and ability to love people and bring down walls so that people can understand that actually we're all supposed to love at this level, and we can through faith. So, I mean, like I just live like that anyway. But being part of this art project, I can't tell you how it was impacting to me to see how something so what the world would consider neutral art, whatever, like you're just doing art.
Just an almond tree.
Just an almond tree. Like it's so simple. And one of the things that happened was that I had this beautiful mature lady come down, little lady, Israeli woman, come down while I was painting, and she had a camcorder in her hand, and she said, "Would you mind if I video you?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." She goes, "No, I want to do like interview." I was like, "Oh," she goes, "like a documentary." I thought, "Wow, sure, no problem. I'm not going to say no to that." So she would come down each day. Beautiful woman. Her name is Noga, and she's actually, a native Israeli, but she's married to a Kuchini, married to an Indian, and they have kids and everything. So she would come down each day, and she would just stand behind me and take different shots, and I just let her do her thing. And then she asked to interview me. So we sat down aside in Grace's house and she interviewed Grace, she interviewed me. And I thought, wow, this is so astounding. And during the interview, no, it wasn't during the interview, during the editing, she asked me to come over to her house and watch the editing. And we were watching it. And she sat back in her seat and she said, why are you doing this?
Mhm.
Why? She goes, you're from Australia. You could go to any country in the world. Why did you come here? You know, and it was the look on her face was like she was serious. She was like, out of everywhere, like this is Israel. And I couldn't help but say, but Israel's beautiful. Like you've got so much beauty here, and the people are amazing. And I love the people. I love the culture. I love that you can go to Tel Aviv and kind of go surfing or go to the beach, and then you can go mountain climbing up in Jerusalem, or you can go, a few hours. Exactly right. You can go down to the desert. I mean, besides being a very spiritual place and a place of great history, it's just beautiful. Like if you want a holiday, go to Israel if you want that. So I started to tell her why I love the country and just shared a bit of my journey. And she was shocked that someone she goes, it's shocking to me that someone would care. That
Yeah.
would like why would you even care? And it really moved her. She's a beautiful woman. And we talked a lot. She's now one of my good friends, and I hope she gets to video. We're actually negotiating a couple of more walls. So I'm hoping this is going to be like a thing that each time I visit.
Yeah.
So she said, next time you come, I want to do another video. So it's built a relationship and a foundation there. But it was really amazing because in the West, we don't have problems in the West. We don't have problems. I mean, we do. We do. I don't want to, offend anyone in the wrong way if they're suffering, but in comparison to other nations that have to do life really hard and literally survive or die, like we don't have pressure from that avenue. And so for people who live in that environment, who aren't exposed to any other culture or any other part of the world, and maybe their information is diluted, I think it was probably a bit of a wake-up call and a bit of a refreshing to see that someone from literally the polar opposite side of the planet would joyfully, liberally, freely, with no hinges attached, no strings attached, come and just be willing to give. I think that was probably the main thing that affected these people the most, is that I didn't have an agenda. And I still don't have an agenda. It was my honor and my pleasure to give what God has given me as a gift. That gave me more pleasure, like Jesus or Yeshua taught. He said it's more blessed to give than it is to receive. And it's true. It really is true. So that was the impact that I think really hit home and hits home in the village, that these people were just like, what? You're coming to do this for free and you don't even know us? You know what I'm saying?
No, I do. And that's been our response in connecting with the Jewish people in the land.
Yeah.
And I can see over the last few decades, these sorts of connections have brought a softness in the Jewish people towards Christians. And there's now a lot of working together, even in Australia, with Jewish groups and Christian groups, because you can just see these walls breaking down. And it's interesting that you've painted on a wall and God is using it to break down walls. And
it's
Jesus
so powerful.
says at the cross, he broke down the wall of enmity.
I know. It's amazing.
And it's extraordinary. It's just wonderful.
So powerful.
Just powerful. So we're going to go to another song at this moment. We're going to come back, but Joshua Aaron is another messianic, beautiful worship leader, and he sings David Danced, Let the Heavens Be Glad. So my guest today is Justin Hook, an artist from Sydney who's just done this amazing mural in Israel. Justin, you call yourself an ecstatic artist. If you can explain to us what that is, and your whole thing of getting into art and what you're doing there in Sydney at the moment. And of course, you're hoping to go back to Israel for some more projects.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm kind of riding a beautiful wave at the moment. I'm going to see where it takes me. So amazingly, I never really studied art and I never considered myself an artist. So I know the only thing I was involved in maybe in high school is when you had to take art classes like everybody else and do a few things. So I've always had the gift on me, but I never did anything with it. It was always just a personal, not even a hobby. It was like a side thing. But about maybe, when was it? 2012 or 13, I was talking with a woman in my workplace where I used to work in the airport, who was a traveler. And she just said, we were talking about life, and she just said to me, do you have any gifts? Like, what are you going to do with your life? And for some reason, I don't know why I said it to her. I just said, well, I'm an artist. I can paint, even though I hadn't painted or
Oh,
touched a
really?
paintbrush for probably about 10 years, honestly. I don't know why it popped out. She said, oh, really? She said, would you paint me something? I'll pay you
Oh,
for it. And I was
oh.
like, oh. And had she not said she'd pay me, I honestly probably wouldn't have, I
Wouldn't.
probably wouldn't have taken up the opportunity back then. I committed to do something for this woman. So after not even touching a paintbrush for so many years, I went out and bought a small canvas. I got some paints, brushes, and we agreed on a little interesting theme. And I started painting again. And when I started painting, I just remember having this incredible rush of like pleasure and fulfillment and purpose. And I thought, why have I not been doing this? You know, so I continued. I finished that painting. It took me about a year because I was so busy doing my other jobs and everything. And it created a beautiful impact with the person I gave it to. And so then other people noticed I was an artist and they asked for work. And so then I decided to, and then I did a few little hobbies on my own. So I just started to slowly get back into it. And the desire started to grow so much. And of course, me, I walk wholeheartedly with Yeshua, with Jesus the Lord. And so things are always very spiritual for me after carving out such a walk with the Lord. I incorporate him into everything. I can't not. He's kind of with me, in me, around me. So I found that everything that I painted, it had such a strong voice from heaven, or it had some sort of an impact.
Yeah.
And I started to notice this in things that I was painting. People started to get impacted and impacted. And one of the things about my art is that I'm self-taught. So I wouldn't consider myself of great skill. I'm still actually learning my skill. Like every time I do a new piece, I'm still discovering my skill, and I'm just journeying it out. But everyone used to say to me, "You're an artist. You should do something with this. This is amazing." I'm thinking, you know, I don't know. But yeah, I would maybe visit galleries or things like that to try and see what was out there. And one thing that I've noticed about in the world, like in the world system of art, like anything that has a pedestal in the world, it's very cutthroat, very competitive.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, most of the art is usually dark. Like that, like I said before earlier in the interview, that there is a place as an artist, whether you're a songwriter, singer, sculptor, painter, whatever, there is a place in the realm of creative that when you're processing emotion, or you're processing whether it's joyful emotion, painful emotion, or you're going through something, the ability to create in that time is one of the most powerful ways to get pain out, or to have those deep places heard. And that's actually the way we're designed. Perfect examples, if you read the Psalms of King David, some of those are very dark, but they were
Absolutely.
songs.
Yeah.
And he was actually processing in the form of worship. So it
Going through.
was what he was going through. And we look at that as something that's considered sanctified and holy. So there is a platform for that.
Correct.
There is a very, very valid, healing, powerful platform, provided that the bullseye at the end is under, like you're doing it towards the Lord. It
Yes.
has a sense of redemption in it.
Yes.
So
Because
he
David
would
always.
always, yeah, he would always pour out his pain and say some really harsh stuff, but then at the end he'd be like, "But you are God, and I trust
Exactly.
you."
Yeah.
So
He'd
that's
always
like,
come to the Lord.
you know what I mean? So I
Yeah.
mean that's the redemption as far as being a believer, that you always have that sense, that anchor point
Yeah.
where we should be naked and open to him. We should be able to share our everything without inhibition. Like we should be able to process like that. And so the arts platform is made for that. But you'll find in the world, like out there in the world, where they have no consciousness of the Lord, they don't know the Lord, that most of the time it just ends up spiraling into this place of darkness. And it's like it has no redemption in it. So it's like something very dark, something very painful. It gets put on a pedestal and everyone's like, "Oh, that's such powerful art." And I'm like, well, you're halfway there. You've processed the pain, but now you're giving the pain a platform.
Yeah.
And so
and no hope.
you're giving no hope. A lot of it's
Yep.
twisted, a lot of it's demonic, a lot of it's filled with death, it's filled with horrible things. And then that shapes the consciousness of worship in society,
Yes.
and you don't get anywhere.
Yeah.
So as an artist in the beginning, when I started to get back into it, understanding that, I thought to myself, I have to break. Like, I will never ever create anything that will become like that. I want to go beyond that,
Yeah.
because
Yep.
I've experienced heaven. Like, I've seen God. I've experienced God in His beauty, in His majesty, in His power, in His love for all people, for His redemption, for His ability to change death into life, for His ability to change crookedness into righteousness. You know, sorrow into joy. So to me, I can't create without at least releasing that aspect.
Yeah.
So one of the most powerful things that I can't help to get away from is painting with the full spectrum of color.
Yep.
Because color triggers me. If I see a really jet blue sky, something happens in me. And I go, wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
If I look out, when I'm looking out my window now, I've got a beautiful gum tree there, and the green is so healthy and thick and lush. And I'm like, oh, it just speaks of life. And then if you see a sunset, it's like the hues that go from like deep red through to, yellow and orange, and then all the way to pink. It does something to the soul. And I think every human being was designed to not only be touched by things like sound frequencies, but also light.
Absolutely.
And so color, to me, carries frequencies of truth. It carries frequencies of heaven. So whenever I'm painting, I actually get stirred in my heart, stirred in my innermost being to create content with specific colors. And I feel that they trigger people into freedom, and they trigger people, well, they touch people with healing. I've even seen it happen with some of my work, that people have been radically affected. So that's why I call myself an ecstatic artist, because I like to wake people up into the reality of the truth, which is the goodness of God, which should set people free.
Amen.
And I think every artist is called to their own avenue of that. And I would love to see more people creating content that would infuse the kingdom of God, which is the help for all nations.
Amen. And because this is really the light and the sound, they go together, and that's, into physics and so forth. But the two together, and it is bringing forth life, His life. And it's really exciting as a musician and a songwriter, worship leader. It's
absolutely
really connect with what you're saying there. It's really, really powerful. Well, Justin, it's been such a joy to talk to you today. We could just keep talking and really pressing in here. So where can people see some of your art and get hold of it?
Well, okay, so I have my own personal website. So if you just look up my full name, it's Justin Andrew Hook. So JustinAndrewHook, Hook.com. So JustinAndrewHook.com. Also, just a tag on the back of it, it's like I didn't share, but I'll try and just give it a bit of a flag, was that I'm actually working in collaboration with Juice for Jesus in Sydney, because I've traveled to Israel so much. I know them as friends. And Bob Mendelsohn, who heads the shop there and travels to Israel a lot, he, knowing me being an artist, he had this big vacant space out the back of his shop, and he decided to brainstorm with me to do something to do with art. Well, fast forward a few years later, we actually ended up renovating this tiny little room, probably the size of a bedroom, getting new lighting, new floors, and we turned it into what's called the Art Lounge Bondi. And basically, we've got a brand new site called theartloungebondi.org. And I'm curating for all of the artists that we choose to host. We choose to host an artist every month. And we have an opening night the first Saturday, or just after Shabbat has finished. The first Saturday of every month, we have an opening night where we celebrate the artist for free. We do this all complimentary. And we obviously hang all of their work and display it. We put it on our website, and then we just invite everyone and anyone to come. And so, if you check out the Art Lounge and sign up, to get emails and things like that, you'll hear about anything that we're doing. We've had an incredible response just over the last year. I've had to host so many different artists of all different walks of life. Not all of them were people of faith. Most of
Yep.
them were, though.
Yep.
But it's been an absolute joy to see every single new artist coming because they're so different. Their content is so different. And just to see them being celebrated and to see them, a lot of people selling work. I mean, the only thing we charge is like a 20% commission on work sold. That's it. So you don't have hanging fees, you don't have hiring fees. It's a kind of a win-win. But yeah, so this is something that I'm very, very heavily involved in. We're looking to kind of broaden this year. And if anyone's an artist out there and you have gallery quality work, or at least something I can look at that you would think would be good to hang, and you're in Sydney or you can come to Sydney, let me know, because we want to give you guys a platform, just like I've had a platform.
Yes.
And it stays on the site forever. I mean, I still have people who buy prints, not necessarily originals, but or sometimes originals from artists that we had months ago. They go onto the site and they purchase. So we're kind of starting a little bit of a movement with the artists, and I'm involved in that.
Yeah.
And then of course in Israel as well. So praise
That's
God, it's all
awesome.
happening.
Yeah, well, that's wonderful, Justin.
Yeah.
Fantastic, and we look forward to hear what happens in Israel with further painting of bare walls into
Yes.
beautiful murals and works of art. Well, bless you, and thank you so much for joining us today. And so we go out now. Another person that's ministered in Israel is a violinist, Ruth Webb. She was with us here in Bendigo in 2019. And
Wow.
this song is To the One Who is Faithful.
Awesome.
Amen.